It's funny how a single sentence can destroy everything you thought you knew about your life. Or maybe in my case, it rebuilt it from the ashes of a lie I'd been living for years. Emma, she said, her voice trembling, I think I'm in love with you. That's how it started, with a confession that felt like a car crash wrapped in a whisper. We were sitting on her worn-out couch in her Brooklyn apartment, the one that always smelled faintly of coffee and vanilla candles. Outside, rain tapped against the window, soft and steady, as if it already knew my heart was about to break or maybe heal. I wasn't sure yet. Her name was Lila Bennett, my best friend since college, my partner in crime through bad breakups, job failures, and all-night Netflix marathons. She was sunshine with a sarcastic streak, the kind of girl who made everyone around her feel seen. And me? I was Emma Lawson, the dependable one. The girl who gave good advice, kept secrets, and never ever crossed lines. Until that night. I remember staring at her, my brain refusing to process the words. Love? From Lila? My Lila, the girl who once helped me stalk my ex's new girlfriend online, who'd laughed with me until dawn, who'd held my hand through panic attacks. It didn't make sense. But the way her eyes glistened under the warm light, scared, sincere, and unguarded, made it feel heartbreakingly real. Lila, don't, I whispered. You don't mean that. Her lips parted, trembling slightly. I've tried not to. God, Emma, I've tried for years. The silence that followed was suffocating. The sound of the rain grew louder, filling the space where words failed. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat was dry, my heart pounding like I'd run miles. The truth was, I didn't know what I felt. Shock? Fear? Maybe a little of both. But beneath it, buried so deep I almost missed it, was something terrifyingly tender, a flicker of warmth I didn't want to name. The next few days were hell. I avoided her texts. I worked late, I stayed out, I pretended nothing happened. But Lila, she didn't chase me. She knew me too well. She knew silence was my shield. And yet I couldn't stop thinking about her. About the way her hand brushed mine that night. About how her eyes lingered, full of longing and guilt. Everywhere I went, I saw her, in the coffee shop where we used to argue over who made better lattes, on the park bench where we'd once spent hours people watching. She was in my thoughts, my playlists, my dreams. One night I finally caved. I texted her. Can we talk? She showed up at my door 20 minutes later, hair still damp from the shower, wearing my old college sweatshirt, the one I'd given her years ago. Hey, she said softly. I stepped aside to let her in, my pulse a chaotic rhythm in my chest. I'm sorry, she blurted out before I could speak. I shouldn't have said anything. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Her eyes were glossy, but she wasn't crying. Lila never cried easily. She was the strong one between us, the one who laughed through heartbreak and pretended not to care. Seeing her like that, raw, stripped of her armor, hurt more than I expected. I just need to know, she whispered. Did I ruin everything? And that was the moment something inside me cracked. Because the truth was, no, she hadn't ruined everything. She just named what I'd been too afraid to feel. I took a step toward her. Then another. Lila, I said, my voice trembling. I don't know what this is, but I can't stop thinking about you. Her breath hitched. Emma, I didn't let her finish. I reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her cheek. Her skin was warm beneath my fingertips, and when she leaned into my touch just barely, my heart completely unraveled. The first kiss wasn't planned. It wasn't slow or cinematic. It was clumsy, desperate, like two people trying to unlearn years of friendship in a single breath. Her lips were soft, hesitant, tasting faintly of mint and fear. When she pulled back, her eyes searched mine, terrified. Was that real? I whispered. Yeah, it was. She laughed, then a shaky, relieved laugh that melted into a quiet sob. I pulled her close, burying my face in her shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, everything felt like it made sense. But of course, nothing that fragile stays simple. The next morning, reality hit hard. She was sitting at my kitchen table sipping coffee, wearing one of my old shirts. The sight should have been domestic, sweet, but instead it was terrifying. Because suddenly, every question I'd avoided came rushing in. What would people say? What if it was just confusion? What if she woke up one day and realized she didn't mean it? And worst of all, what if I lost her for good? She must have sensed the panic behind my silence. You're overthinking again, she murmured, setting down her mug. Because that's what I do, I said bitterly. I ruin things by thinking too much. Lila reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. You don't ruin things, Emma. You make them real. Her words were so simple, but they cut straight through the noise in my head. Still, I couldn't shake the fear. The world outside wasn't kind to women like us women who loved each other in ways that didn't fit neatly into anyone's expectations. But when she smiled soft and steady, I realized maybe love wasn't supposed to fit neatly at all. That summer became a quiet rebellion. We didn't shout our love from rooftops. We didn't post it online. We just were. Late-night drives with the windows down, her hand resting on my knee. Movie nights where we pretended to watch but never did. Soft laughter in the dark, whispered promises that maybe, just maybe, this was worth the risk. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me, that same tender awe in her eyes, and I'd feel something like peace. Because for all the chaos, all the fear, love, real love had finally found us. The first month was perfect in that dangerous, fragile way that early love often is, all stolen glances and whispered secrets, laughter in grocery aisles, lazy mornings tangled in sheets that smelled like her perfume and my shampoo. But reality was waiting for us, patient and cruel. It started with small things, the way we hesitated to hold hands in public, the nervous glances when someone looked too long, the awkward explanations when mutual friends asked why we'd been spending so much time together lately. We never said it out loud. But both of us knew. We were living in a bubble. And bubbles burst. The first crack came one night in late August. We'd gone to a friend's rooftop party, cheap wine, loud music, string lights swaying in the humid breeze. Lila looked stunning, wearing a simple white sundress that caught the glow of the city lights. She always hated being the center of attention, but people gravitated toward her anyway. Her laugh, her ease, the way she made everyone feel seen. I tried not to stare, but I always did. Halfway through the night, I noticed her talking to some guy I vaguely remembered from college, tall, confident, and leaning a little too close. She laughed at something he said, and for reasons I couldn't explain, my stomach twisted. Jealousy. It burned like acid. When she finally came over, her cheeks flushed, she looked surprised by my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, brushing hair from her face. "Nothing," I said too quickly. "You looked like you were having fun." Her brows furrowed. "You mean with Jason?" "He was just talking about his new job." "Sure," I muttered, taking another sip of my drink. "Emma." Her tone softened. "You know it's not like that." "I know," I said, even though the truth was I didn't. Not really. Because what were we? Best friends? Lovers? Something in between? We hadn't defined it. Maybe because defining it meant breaking the illusion that it was easy. Lila sighed, the hurt flashing briefly across her face before she masked it with that familiar half-smile. "You're cute when you're jealous, you know that?" She leaned in and kissed me, just a quick, hidden brush of lips, but my heart stumbled. And for a second I forgot the noise, the people, the uncertainty, until someone behind us said, "Whoa, are you too?" We froze. A few people had turned, half curious, half amused. My blood ran cold. Lila pulled back quickly, laughter bubbling out, forced, nervous. "Drunk," she said. "We're just drunk." The word sliced through me like glass. Just drunk. I smiled, pretending not to care. But the truth was, it hurt more than I wanted to admit. The car ride home was silent. Lila kept glancing at me, her fingers tapping restlessly on the steering wheel. "Emma, say something." "There's nothing to say," I replied. "That's not fair," she said, her voice tight. "You know I didn't mean it like that." "Didn't you?" I turned to face her. "You couldn't even look at me after. You laughed it off like it was nothing." Her jaw clenched. What was I supposed to do? Announce to everyone that I'm in love with my best friend? "Yes," I snapped. "Or at least not pretend I'm some kind of mistake." The words hung between us, sharp and heavy. She pulled over, parking under a flickering streetlight. The night air was thick and suffocating. "Emma," she whispered, her voice breaking, "you're not a mistake. You're the only thing that's ever felt right." Her honesty undid me. My anger dissolved into tears. I didn't want to cry. She reached for me, hesitated, and then slowly, I let her pull me into her arms. We sat there for a long time, the city quiet around us, Just two women trying to figure out how to love each other in a world that didn't know what to do with that kind of love. Days passed. Things settled. But something had changed. A tension, quiet but constant, like the low hum of a storm waiting to break. We didn't talk about that night again. We went back to work, back to our routines, back to pretending it was easy. Then came her mother's birthday. Lila's parents lived upstate, old-fashioned, church every Sunday kind of people. I'd met them a few times before, always as Emma, her college friend. They adored me. Or at least they used to. When Lila invited me to come that weekend, I hesitated. "Are you sure?" She smiled tightly. "They'll love seeing you." What she didn't say, what we both knew, was that her mother still thought Lila was dating some guy from her old job. So we went. We smiled, we played the roles, we sat through dinner pretending the world hadn't shifted beneath our feet. At one point, her mom turned to me and said, "Emma, you should really find yourself a good man. You're such a sweet girl." I almost laughed. If only she knew. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Lila and I stood on the porch, the cold air biting at our skin. "I hate lying," I whispered. "I know," she said. "I hate it too." "Then why do we keep doing it?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely audible. "Because I'm not ready for them to hate me." That broke something in me. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. Love shouldn't have to be this hard. But it was. That weekend marked the start of our unraveling. We didn't fight often, but when we did, it was brutal. She'd accuse me of pulling away. I'd accuse her of hiding. We'd make up, then fall apart again. It was a cycle: passion, guilt, silence, repeat. And yet, no matter how much we hurt each other, I couldn't walk away. Because when things were good, they were extraordinary. When she smiled at me across a crowded room, it felt like the whole world narrowed to that single moment. When she kissed me, it was like coming home. Maybe that's why I held on, because deep down I believed that kind of love was worth the pain. Then came the night that changed everything. It was raining again, the way it had been the night she first confessed. I was sitting on my couch, grading papers for the writing class I taught, when my phone buzzed. "Lila, can I come over?" I texted back. "Always." When she arrived, she was drenched, mascara smudged, eyes red. Something was wrong. "Hey," I said gently. "What happened?" She didn't answer. She just threw herself into my arms, trembling. "I told them," she whispered. Took me a second to understand. "You told your parents?" She nodded. "They didn't take it well." My chest tightened. "What did they say?" "That I'm confused. That you corrupted me. That I need help." Her voice cracked. "They told me not to come back until I fix it." I felt anger rise like fire, but beneath it was something softer, a fierce, helpless love. I held her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You did the right thing." She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Then why does it hurt so much?" I didn't have an answer. I just held her tighter, letting her cry until the storm outside faded into silence. After that night, everything changed. We weren't hiding anymore. But we were exposed, raw and vulnerable, facing a world that didn't understand. Some friends drifted away. My sister stopped asking about her. My students whispered when they saw us together off campus. But through it all, Lila stayed. She found an apartment near mine, started painting again, and little by little, the pieces began to fit. We learned to find joy in small things: morning coffee runs, cooking dinner together, slow dances in the kitchen to music only we could hear. The world outside could keep its opinions. Inside those four walls, we were free. One evening, months later, we went back to that same rooftop where everything had almost fallen apart. The city stretched before us, chaotic, beautiful, alive. Lila leaned against me, her hand slipping into mine. "Do you ever think about how different everything could have been?" she asked. "All the time," I said. "But then I think about this moment right now, and I wouldn't change a thing." She smiled, that same soft smile that had ruined and saved me in equal measure. "I used to think love was supposed to be easy," she said. "Now I think it's supposed to be honest." I turned to her, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Then we're doing pretty well." She laughed, and under the glow of the city lights, I kissed her. Slow this time, certain, unafraid. For once, it didn't feel like a secret. Felt like the truth. It's strange how healing doesn't come with fireworks. It comes quietly, through little moments, through forgiveness, through choosing each other again and again, even when it's hard. A year had passed since that stormy night. A year since Lila lost her family, and I nearly lost her to the weight of it all. But we made it through. Not perfectly, God, no. There were still days when she'd wake up crying, when I'd find her staring at old photos of her parents, pretending she wasn't thinking about what she'd lost. There were still moments when I'd wonder if loving me had cost her too much. But somehow, between all the hurt and the rebuilding, we'd found a rhythm, something quieter, deeper. We moved in together that spring. The apartment wasn't much, 2 bedrooms turned into one, when Lila decided her art studio looked better with my desk in it. The walls were covered in her paintings. Messy, vibrant, full of feeling. Every morning, sunlight would pour through the big window and fall across her half-finished canvases. Sometimes I'd watch her paint barefoot, hair tied up, music humming low, and I'd think, this is what home looks like. She caught me once, smiling at her from the doorway. You're staring again, she teased, her hands streaked with blue and gold. Can you blame me? I said, walking over to press a kiss to her paint-stained cheek. She grinned. You're gonna get color on your face. I don't mind, I whispered. You make even messes beautiful. Life wasn't suddenly easy just because we'd chosen love. Bills piled up. Lila's art show got canceled twice before finally happening. My job at the college became more demanding, and I was constantly balancing my writing, my students, and the fear that one wrong step could cost me everything. But love, real love, isn't about grand gestures or perfection. It's about endurance, the quiet choice to stay. On the nights when she'd come home exhausted and silent, I'd cook her favorite soup, sit beside her, and let her lean into me without words. On the mornings when I'd doubt myself, she'd leave little notes in my coffee mug. You're enough. You always have been. We were learning how to be soft in a world that wanted us to be ashamed. Then came an email that would change everything. I'd written an essay, half confession, half love letter, about what it meant to love your best friend in a society that pretends love has rules. It wasn't meant for publication. It was just something I'd poured out one sleepless night, trying to make sense of us. But my colleague read it. Without asking, she submitted it to an online magazine. The next morning, my inbox exploded. Messages from strangers, from students, from women who'd been hiding the same secret for years. Terrified me. When Lila found me sitting on the floor, shaking, she didn't ask what happened. She just picked up my laptop, read the article silently, and smiled. This is beautiful, she said. They'll know, Lila. Everyone will know. Good, she whispered, cupping my face in her paint-stained hands. It's time. The days that followed were a blur of interviews, angry comments, supportive messages, and more exposure than I'd ever wanted. But amid the chaos, something incredible happened. People started sharing their stories. Women who'd lost friends, families, homes, and yet still chose love. Men who said the story helped them understand. Parents who said it made them think differently about their children. It wasn't just our story anymore. It was everyone's. And for the first time, I didn't feel ashamed. A few weeks later, Lila got her big break. A small gallery in Manhattan wanted to showcase her new collection, Unspoken Things. Every piece was about us. About love hidden behind smiles, about fear and longing, about quiet joy and defiance of judgment. At the opening, the room buzzed with murmurs. Lila stood beside me, nervous but radiant, her hand gripping mine under the table. When the curator asked her to say a few words, she stepped forward, voice trembling at first but growing steadier. I used to think love had to look a certain way, she said. That it had to make sense to everyone else to be real. But I was wrong. Love isn't about what makes sense, it's about what makes you feel alive. She glanced at me then, and for a moment, it felt like the entire world disappeared. She's my muse, she said simply. She's the reason I paint. The reason I'm not afraid anymore. The room went silent. Then applause. Genuine, loud, unstoppable. I didn't cry then. I waited until later when we got home, when she kicked off her heels and laughed until she nearly fell over. That's when I lost it. Because it hit me, she wasn't hiding anymore. And neither was I. That summer, we took a trip upstate back to the lake we used to visit in college. It was quiet there, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat. We rented a tiny cabin, cooked simple meals, read books by the fire. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Lila took my hand and led me to the edge of the dock. The water shimmered gold, and the air smelled like pine and memory. I used to come here when I needed to think, she said. It's where I decided I'd tell you the truth. That night years ago. I smiled softly. The night you ruined my entire life? She laughed, brushing her thumb against my cheek. The night I saved it. Then she pulled something from her pocket, a small silver ring, simple but beautiful. Emma, she said, her voice shaking just a little, I don't care if the world never understands us. I just want this you and me every day choosing each other. Will you keep choosing me? My throat tightened. Tears blurred the world into gold and light. Always, I whispered. Even when you steal the covers and leave paint on the couch. She laughed through her tears, sliding the ring onto my finger. Deal. We stood there until the stars came out, wrapped in silence, wrapped in everything we'd fought for. Months passed. Seasons changed. The city didn't feel as loud anymore. People still stared sometimes, still whispered. But it didn't sting the way it used to. Because love, the real kind, has a way of softening the noise. Our apartment became a gallery of memories. Her first art award hung beside my framed essay. Polaroids of coffee dates, road trips, lazy mornings. Little pieces of us scattered across walls and shelves. Proof that love doesn't need permission to exist. Sometimes when I'd be grading papers late at night, she'd come up behind me, rest her chin on my shoulder and whisper, "You're still my favorite story." And every time I'd smile, thinking she's mine too. One Sunday morning I woke up to find her gone. For a terrifying minute, I thought maybe she'd left, the old fear rising like smoke. But then I smelled coffee. When I walked into the living room, she was sitting by the window, sketching something quietly. "What are you drawing?" I asked. She turned the page toward me. It was us sitting together, old and wrinkled, surrounded by paintings and books. Two women who had built a world of their own. "I call it Still Here," she said with a shy smile. I sat down beside her, leaned my head against hers. "It's perfect." She looked at me, eyes soft. You know, if someone had told me 10 years ago that I'd fall in love with my best friend, I would have laughed. And now, she whispered, I'd say it's the best thing I ever did. That night I dreamt of our younger selves, two scared girls on a couch in Brooklyn. The rain outside, a confession hanging in the air. I wanted to tell them, it's going to be okay. The world will hurt you, but it will also give you peace. You'll lose things, but you'll find yourselves. You'll survive. And in the end, love, quiet, stubborn, unshakable, will win. 1 year later, I published my first book, The Space Between Us. It wasn't about labels. It wasn't even about romance. It was about choosing honesty, about learning to love fearlessly. When I read the dedication aloud at the launch, my voice trembled. For Lila, for teaching me that love isn't about what the world accepts, but what the heart refuses to deny. She was in the front row, smiling that same smile that had wrecked and rebuilt me. After the applause, after the handshakes and photos, she pulled me close and whispered, "You did it." I smiled. "No, we did." The city lights flickered through the window that night as we curled up on the couch, the same couch where it all began. "Do you ever miss the old US?" I asked. She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No. I think we just became who we were always meant to be." I kissed her softly, the kind of kiss that didn't need to prove anything. Outside, life went on, taxis, sirens, laughter from the street below. But inside there was only warmth. Love. Real, imperfect, defiant love. And as she fell asleep in my arms, I whispered the words I'd wanted to say from the very beginning, the ones I'd been too afraid to believe in. I'm not scared anymore. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.